Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we've got episode 109. It's Friday the 5th. We've got a huge weekend of combat sports. 5 events this weekend, all of which I'm pretty stoked for. The big two, of course, we're going to have a PBC pay-per-view tomorrow night headlined by Pitbull Cruz, Lamont Roach. Totally random fight, but one that I think everyone is looking forward to. This is a real 50-50. And then also the big one, UFC 323. This is Merab's fourth title defense of 2025 against Petr Yan in their rematch. Co-main event is going to be Alexandre Pantoja defending his flyweight title against Joshua Van. Fantastic fight. And this is also the final pay-per-view for the UFC, potentially of all time. Maybe they'll do another one on Paramount if it's a big fight. Who knows? But as of right now, this is the final ever UFC pay-per-view. The real end of the ESPN era. Next week, they do still have one card. The Apex card next week will be the final ESPN UFC card, but this is the final ESPN pay-per-view UFC event, and it's just crazy that we're almost done with it, guys. Doing these $80 pay-per-views. Next month, it's just going to start off with Paramount, and everything's going to be free on there. So definitely much better system. But yeah, let's talk about this card because they're going out with a bang. This card is pretty loaded. Lots of great fights on the Vegas event. Starting with that main event, Merab and Petr Yan, I feel like I don't even need to talk about it too much because we've already seen Merab beat Petr Yan pretty dominantly, and I wouldn't be surprised if this fight goes the exact same way. In fact, I am fully expecting that it does go that way, and Merab just kind of dominates Petr Yan. There's really no other way I see this fight going. I don't see this as much as, ooh, we got a title fight. I see it more as Merab trying to break a record and make history with doing 4 successful title defenses in a year, something no other UFC champion has ever done. So I love that UFC decided to give him this opportunity to break that record, and I think he's going to do it. I don't think that he finishes Petr Yan. He's a pretty tough guy. I would expect that Merab will do another 50-45 on him, as he's done with his last few fights. Yeah, I mean, there's not even really too much to say. He's on the verge of becoming the bantamweight GOAT. He may already be the bantamweight GOAT. The only fight that I really have a lot of interest in is these 2 fights that we have on January 24th. You've got Umar Nurmagomedov versus Davison Figueiredo, and then you've also got Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. I think the winner of Umar and Figgy will get that next title shot unless Song Yadong can somehow finish Sean O'Malley, something crazy. But I would think it'll be the winner of Umar Figgy next, and if it's Umar, he gave Merab a very competitive fight, so that would be the one I'm most interested in seeing. And who knows? Maybe Song Yadong can also do something crazy in that fight, and we can have it'll be a little bit exciting. Those are the 2 contenders that I'm more interested in seeing. Petr Yan, he's great, of course, but I don't really see him having too much of a chance in this fight, and that's really all there is to say about it. As for the co-main event, I still have to favor Pantoja by a pretty decent measure, but I think Josh Van, his explosivity and how exciting he is as a striker, really, really does give him a strong case that he can be competitive in this fight. I think Pantoja is a very underrated champion. I mean, he's already cleared out the division. This is the only guy he hasn't fought yet, and that's mainly because Josh Van has risen. He's rose to prominence so quickly in this division. I mean, he's had 5 fights this year, I want to say. He's just been on a tear, and he just ran up the ranks so quickly. I mean, I think 8 months ago he wasn't even ranked, and now he's number 1. So for him to just excel through the division so quickly, one can show you how thin it is, but also can show you how strength of schedule can really be on your side. He's the youngest fighter in UFC history to reach I think it's 1,000 significant strikes. I think that's the stat I saw the other day, which is very, very impressive. And all the other 3 before him, the other next 3 youngest, they've all become champions before. I think it was Jessica Andrade, or it was Max Holloway, then Andrade, then John Jones. They've all been champions. So I do think that Joshua Van will become a champion at some point. I just don't think it's going to be on Saturday. I think that Pantoja's wrestling is going to make the difference. I think that Josh Van will definitely, maybe even be superior to him in striking. In fact, he probably is. But then Pantoja will be able to get it to the ground. And once he does that, I see a submission happening like he's done in his last 2 fights. Yeah, I see Pantoja finishing. Well, I don't know if he finishes it. I think there's a pretty good chance. I would say it's either going to be a finish from the 3rd round on, or he can win by decision. Who knows? I mean, you look at Steve Urseg. Nobody expected him to, and then he gave Pantoja a very competitive fight. So maybe we see the same thing here. Everyone's really excited for this fight. Some people I think are overhyping Vance's chances in the fight, but we'll see what he's got in him. I'm really, really excited for it. But I do have Pantoja winning, and still in both the main and co-main. Before the Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira, and it's between the winner of this and the next week's Royval Cobb fight. That's going to determine who the next contender is. Really, just whoever looks better. This is a really, really good fight. Both coming off great wins. Moreno obviously beat Usyk earlier this year. I thought that he looked really good in that. And then Tatsuro Taira had a really strong win in August. I thought that he looked great there. I mean, Taira is the slight favorite. I would maybe lean a little bit more in his favor just because, I don't know, I've seen Moreno, Tatsuro Taira, before he lost a fight earlier this year, I think it was late last year, I can't remember. Before he lost that fight, he was just, he was the guy, right? Like, he was the hyped up prospect. And then he went off a little bit. Moreno, before he beat Usyk, it was a little bit of a question of how much does he really have left, and we saw, okay, yeah, he's still there. He's still a title contender. So I'm going to lean in the favor of Tatsuro Taira to win this fight. And then I would not be surprised at all if he ends up getting the next title shot. I think it's actually quite likely, as opposed to Royval versus Cobb. We'll figure out who gets the next title shot after that fight takes place. But considering that they put this fight as directly preceding Pantoja's fight, it was the same thing they did last Vegas event, or not last Vegas event, but last time Pantoja fought. The fight right before it was Royval versus Vaughn. And then Joshua Van won that fight. So it's like, all right, and then they faced him off right after. They're doing the exact same thing here, so I have to think the UFC is positioning the winner of Moreno-Taira to get the title shot as opposed to the winner of Royval versus Cobb. So we'll see. Also on the main card, you're going to have Henry Cejudo taking on Peyton Talbot. Really interesting fight. And I think a lot of people are picking Henry Cejudo to win this fight. I'm getting behind Peyton Talbot. I was surprised they gave Talbot this fight to fight someone as accomplished as Henry Cejudo is. And even just give him a ranked fight at all, or someone with Henry Cejudo's name value and stuff. But I think this shows that they do believe in Peyton Talbot, even though he did lose the fight earlier this year against Barcelos. He's come back into it. He had a good win over the summer, and now we're going to see him go for his first real tough, big name opponent, and that's Henry Cejudo. Most people are picking Cejudo to win this fight. I think Peyton Talbot wins it, and I actually feel quite confident about that. I think this is really just old guard versus new guard. I think Peyton Talbot has a lot of potential, and so yeah, I'm picking him to beat Henry Cejudo, probably by decision. Before you'll have Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. Really good fight. Kind of a pick 'em. I'm not sure. I think it's just going to be a fun war. We'll see what happens. Light heavyweight is an interesting division because you don't have a lot of names, but new guys are starting to sprout up, and it's getting a little bit more interesting. I mean, Blachowicz is ranked number 5. If he can get a good win here and then another one, he may not be too far off from another title shot. I'm not sure, but we'll see. Grant Dawson is back on this card. I can't remember the last time he fought. But he's fighting Manuel Torres in the featured prelim. That should be good. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan, maybe the prelim that I think we're all really looking forward to. Terrence McKinney, win or lose, is going to make it a fun fight, and it's going to be a short night. And Chris Duncan is always game. We all remember that fight with Rubeski. I'm really excited for that one. Macy Barber back after her controversial pullout last minute. She's going to be fighting Karine Silva. Nazim Sadikov versus Fares Ziam. Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira is on the early prelims. That's a really good fight, and it's that early on. So I'm excited for this. I mean, Edson Barboza versus Jalen Turner. Mansour Abdul Malik is on this card against Antonio Tricoli. It's going to be a fun one, dude. I'm excited. I'm surprised that Jalen Turner came out of retirement, but then again, I'm also not. That was a bit of an odd retirement, but here we are. Let's talk about the boxing card. This is not, the UFC is not the only pay-per-view we have this week, and we also have Pitbull versus Roach. Now, listen, I do not think that Pitbull versus Roach on its own should be a pay-per-view main event. Now, the card, at least the card was looking like this is absolutely worth pay-per-view. The 4 fights you had, all 4 were pretty much 50-50 fights, all for either a world title or a unified world title or an interim world title. Now, we already talked about it. Janibek Alimkhanali got popped for PEDs this week. He is out of the fight versus Erislandy Lara. Johan Gonzalez is stepping in. So those IBF, WBO titles that Janibek holds will no longer be on the line for Saturday. It will just be a WBA middleweight title on the line, not the rest of it. But you know what? This is still a good fight. It's been downgraded from co-main event. Now Fulton versus Foster is the co-main, which makes a lot of sense, as it should be. But yeah, I mean, as much of the blow that Lara Janabek is not on this card just because that was, another unification in middleweight. We're one step closer to undisputed, and that does suck, especially with how hard it is to get those deals done at 160. This is a good fight still, I think, and this is a great 4-fight card. Again, it's also a little bit of its value for that pay-per-view, that $75, $80 price, but let's talk about it. Pitbull versus Cruz, who do I think wins? Or not Pitbull versus Cruz, Pitbull is Cruz. Pitbull versus Lamont Roach. It's a really tough one to say. I do think, and this is probably where I'm going to lead, I'm going to lean in the favor of Lamont Roach. Just because, one, I think that he's the better fighter than Pitbull Cruz is. I think Pitbull Cruz is incredibly fun to watch. And I think that he is a decent boxer. And he always brings the fight, and he makes it a tough night for anyone he's in the ring with. Anyone. Including Tank Davis, and certainly including Rolly Romero. Even the Jose Valenzuela fight, which he lost, he gave Valenzuela, that was still a close fight. But I do think he's limited, and I think that a lot of the fights he has are quite close when they don't need to be as close. And the only question is, okay, well, Pitbull's a 140-pounder. Lamont Roach is a 130-pounder, really a 135-pounder now, but still he's coming up in weight, one division, and if you look at the length of his career, really two divisions. The thing is that Pitbull Cruz only ever came up to 140 last year for that Rolly Romero fight, and then he just stayed there. I've thought ever since then he needs to move back down to 135. I think he has no business being at 140. In fact, I think the Lamont Roach has a pretty decent size advantage. Granted, Pitbull Cruz is more used to fighting at this weight, and that could play into it, but I do think Roach is significantly the bigger guy. I think Roach was a huge 130-pounder, and I think he'll fit in just fine at 140. I'd still kind of like both of them to go back down to 135. I feel like this fight should have just been taking place at lightweight, but I get that they want to use the WBC interim belt that Pitbull Cruz holds, and I think that this is kind of PBC's way of trying to launch Lamont Roach as a star. Obviously, you saw his draw with Tank, and now that Tank is probably not going to fight him again and may not ever fight again, PBC's like, let's strike while the iron's hot. Everyone was impressed by Lamont Roach. What if we make him our new Tank? And let's put him in with a tough name, with the semi-world title on the line and see how it goes. And I think that Roach probably wins this fight. I think it's going to be really good. I think it'll be competitive. It's a great clash of styles. It's a fantastic 50-50 fight, but I am going to lean in the favor of Roach. He will also be stripped of his WBA title finally as soon as he steps into the ring on December 6th, and that bell sounds, which just makes sense. He hasn't defended the Super Featherweight Championship since June of 2024. Jazza Dickens is currently the interim champion. He has been since July, and before that, Batur Gaziev was interim champion for about a year, I think. So we've been waiting for Roach to be stripped of that title, and I'm glad the WBA is finally doing its due diligence and realizing he's never going to come back down to 130. He's not even come back down to 135. So, he will no longer have that belt. Dickens will be upgraded, and then his fight with Tsutsumi on December 27th will now be a full world championship. So that adds a little bit more excitement to that card. I also just saw that card looks like it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, but they're going to have the time zone of the card set up so that it'll be primetime Japan time, which means we're going to have to wake up really early for it again, which is a shame. I was hoping it wouldn't be, but I can't really complain. It is all Japanese fighters. It only makes sense that they would, have the time be at that certain time in Japan. As for the rest of that card, Stephen Fulton, Oshaki Foster is your co-main event. This is a really, really good one, and I don't even know if I want to pick a winner in this fight. I think it could end up being a little bit of a boring fight because they're both kind of counter-punchers, but who knows? It could still be exciting. It's a great matchup. I mean, obviously, I do think Fulton is the better fighter overall compared to Foster. However, Fulton is going to be at a severe size disadvantage. I thought he was a small featherweight. Now he's going up to 130 when Oshaki Foster is a big super featherweight. I mean, realistically, Foster should be a lightweight, and Fulton should be a featherweight. In this fight, it's at 130. So just that size advantage just kind of lets you know. I do still think Foster is potentially the best 130-pounder in the world right now. So I don't know. I really don't know. It's tough for me to pick a winner in this fight because I do think Fulton is a little bit better than Foster overall. It's just the weight. And weight does matter in boxing. And we've seen Fulton. He's a little bit chinny since that Inoue fight. So I don't know, man. This is going to be a really, really interesting fight. I do think whoever wins this fight, it will not be close. I think it will end up being a pretty wide decision. Either way it goes. I don't know if I want to – I want to – it's more like – I don't know, man. I don't know. This is a tough one. I want to lean with Fulton because I do think he's better, but I can also very much see Foster just kind of running away with it and proving that he is the best 130 pounder in the world. So we're just gonna have to see, man. It's a really, really interesting fight, and I'm excited for it. Now back to that middleweight championship between Lara and Gonzalez. I feel like Johan Gonzalez is always a guy who's going to be in these fun fights, and he'll give Lara a good time. I mean, Lara is 42 years old. Some point he's going to lose one of these fights. The thing is that Lara has actually been on a bit of a run, knocking out all of his last few opponents, and they've all been these B-tier middleweights. I mean, even Danny Garcia was not a middleweight, and he was well past his prime. So Gonzalez, a guy who's not a top-tier middleweight, I have to think that Lara is a pretty decent favorite, especially Gonzalez coming in on just a few short days' notice. The only thing I can think of is that Gonzalez is going to make the fight uncomfortable, and he's going to be there for a long time. He's going to be hard to get out of there, and I think that could have an effect on a 42-year-old Erislandy Lara, but realistically, I do still have to pick Lara to win the fight. I don't know if he stops in. Maybe he does, but I think it will be a fun one because Gonzalez is never in a boring fight. Before that, we had the interim middleweight championship between Jesus Ramos Jr. and Shane Mosley Jr., a terrific fight. Shane Mosley been waiting for a big fight for a while, ever since he beat Daniel Jacobs. It was a year and a half ago. Ramos had a terrific start to the year with two big stoppage wins. Down at 154. This is his first fight at 160, which I think could be a bit of an issue for him. However, I do have to side with him. I think very highly of Jesus Ramos. I think that he was a top 10 154 pounder before he moved up, and I think that he'll be a top 10, potentially even a top 5 middleweight with how thin the division is. So he's not far off at all from getting a title shot if he beats Shane Mosley, and I do think Shane Mosley Jr. is good. I just think Jesus Ramos is definitely a bit better. It's just a question of that size difference. Frank Martin is going to headline the prelims back against Rances Barthélemy. He's looking pretty good at 140, moved up in weight. Again, it's been a bit of a long layoff, but Barthélemy, I'm not expecting too much. He had a pretty, he gave, I don't know, I remember his fight with Jose Ramirez, and I just remember it being kind of like a non-event. He was there all 12 rounds, had Ramirez in some, did he drop him? I think he may have dropped Ramirez at some point in that fight. Other than that, not much really happened. So I have to favor Martin here. I think Barthélemy could win some rounds. Maybe he makes it a little bit competitive, but you have to think Martin wins. Isaac Lucero is back on this card fighting Roberto Valenzuela Jr., and Luis Nunes is back against Hector Sosa. So two undefeated fighters coming up. Should be some pretty fun fights on that prelims undercard. I mean, all these PBC cards recently have been so stacked. I'm just curious what they're going to do next, and I really hope this one delivers. Again, Janibek Lara not happening was a very big hit, but this card is still going to be pretty solid, I think. Also, this weekend, you've got Jai Opetaia defending his IBF and Ring Magazine Cruiserweight Championships against one Huseyin Cinkara, his IBF mandatory. He's been there for a while. Again, this is going to be Opetaia's third fight this year, and his third fight against a no-name. Opetaia is probably going to blast through Cinkara within the first few rounds. I'll say by 8 for sure. Cinkara should be out of there. I don't know anything about Cinkara. Maybe he can make this a really competitive fight. Maybe he can do something crazy, but just considering Opetaia's last few fights, I don't really see a whole lot of reason why I would give Cinkara any sort of chance when Opetaia is definitely the best cruiserweight in the world. Maybe hold Zurdo, but Zurdo doesn't want to fight him. After this, I say Opetaia just goes for Chris Billum-Smith. Not really a whole lot else to do. That's still a really big fight and a really fun fight and a competitive one. So I think that should definitely be what Opetaia goes for next if it's not Zurdo. On that undercard, a lot of good Australian names, not all necessarily in competitive fights. I mean, Terry Moana is back. Jake Wiley's got another fight. Max McIntyre, he's pretty fun. Ben Mahoney. Jason Maloney is back in this card in an 8-rounder. Excited to see him back in the ring after his loss to Tenshin Nasukawa earlier this year. So it should be a fun one. No longer on DAZN. It's now going to be on Fight Pass. UFC Fight Pass. Yeah, so I don't know if their deal with them ran up, Tasman Fighters, but this fight's going to be on Stan pay-per-view in Australia, and we were worried that's the only place they were going to broadcast it. It's now been confirmed it will be on Fight Pass for the rest of the world. Matchroom has their Monaco show tomorrow. It is awesome. 5 fights, all of which I'm really excited for. Main event, Shabazz Massoud, Peter McGrail. They're calling this a 50-50. I get it. I have to favor with Shabazz Massoud by a pretty strong margin. I think Peter McGrail is good, but I think that his last 2 fights against Reese Edwards and Iona Baluta, they were both short notice opponents, and both of them ended up being quite competitive. And he has been stopped before. So I think Peter McGrail is a really good, fun fighter at British level, but I do think Shabazz Massoud is getting onto that world level territory. I mean, the way he beat Liam Davies was so dominant in that fight. I would like to see Liam Davies versus Peter McGrail, and I think Peter McGrail will make it a fun one, and it'll be a good clash of styles. But yeah, I'm pretty strongly getting behind Masood to win this fight and get that EBU European title. No IBO title on the line because IBO had a problem with being on the same level as European, and Matchroom said, well, European's more important to us. Conor Walker is going to be fighting Pat McCormack in the co-main event over 12 rounds. No British title on the line because it's not in Britain, and that's what I think is a little bit silly. Both these fights are Brit versus Brit, and they're not in Britain, so a little bit annoying, but it's whatever. Good fight nonetheless. Conor Walker is one of my favorite British fighters. He's always so exciting. He's tough as nails. And it kills me to predict against him just because I do think Pat McCormack, as we all know, is very, very talented and is going to become a world-level fighter sooner rather than later. And this is definitely his first big test as a fighter, and I'm glad they made this fight. But I do think McCormack beats him. I don't think he stops him, probably not, but I do think McCormack wins this fight by decision. And yeah, that's just how I see it going. So I hate it for Conor Walker, but I do think Pat McCormack is just genuine. He's just better. And then after this, Conor Walker goes back to British level, fights someone like Constantine Urso, who just had a good win last weekend. Makes a lot of sense to me. Beatriz Ferreira versus Alif Nur Turhan for the IBF Lightweight Championship. Great fight. I love that. Nur Turhan, she's been going on a crazy run, knocking everyone out. She's got hands of stone. It's insane. And then Beatriz Ferreira, of course, is just insanely talented. Such a good Brazilian lightweight boxer. She holds that title. A lot of other good fights to be made at 135. They're not all happening. Nobody really wants to fight her. But this is a good one, dude. I like the Ferreira versus Turhan fight. We'll see who ends up getting the win. I do think Beatriz Ferreira will beat her. I think Turhan definitely has a chance because of that power, but we haven't really seen her pass like 1 or 2 rounds, so I think that Ferreira is definitely going to end up outboxing her in the end, but it should be a good one. Johnny Fisher's back against Ivan Belaz. Don't really know much about his opponent, but it's Johnny Fisher. Not the best heavyweight, but always fun and got a lot of power. So I expect he'll win this one within the first few rounds. Hopefully we see some improvements. And then Hugo Micallef, an undefeated fighter from Monaco, is going to be fighting Sean McComb, the Irish guy who gave Arnold Barboza a tough night. This is a really competitive fight, I feel. I want to favor Sean McComb because I do think he's good, but I don't think that he's great, if that makes sense. And I have no idea how good this Hugo guy is. He's undefeated, but I think I was looking at his record. Doesn't really look like he's ever fought anyone of note. So Sean McComb could be a step too far. We know how Sean McComb fights. A little bit boring, but, a counterpuncher. If he can figure this guy out, I think he could win a wide decision. It just depends on how good Hugo Micallef really is. And then lastly, tonight we'll have a BKFC card 85, their final card of the year, their final one, or no, not their final card, their final numbered card of the year, and their final card at the Hollywood Hard Rock Casino. Main event, Austin Trout versus Luis Palomino 2. They are rematching for the lightweight semifinals. So the winner of this is going to advance next year to go ahead, and they're going to fight, who won the last fight? Franco Tenaglia. They're going to go and they're going to fight Franco Tenaglia next year, and that will be for the full lightweight championship. Tenaglia beat Ben Bonner in the first semifinal in October, so the winners will meet. This is a rematch, of course. I don't know. I want to favor with Trout. I believe he won the first fight, right? So, yeah, you have to side with Trout, but it should be a fun one. Co-main event, Justin Ibarola versus Ryan Reber for the vacant bantamweight championship. Ibarola has been a prospect coming through, and now he's getting his shot at the belt. That's a good fight. Before that, you got Leonardo Perdomo. He's back against Corey Willis. Again, another good opponent for Perdomo, but I think that he blows Willis out. First few rounds, again, I mean, the guy is just a monster. He's a killer. He's fought, I think, on every one of the cards that they've done at the Hard Rock this year. And yeah, I think that Perdomo wins this one by knockout, like first round, like he does literally everyone else. And then hopefully they get him to fight Ben Rothwell next because he is definitely the number one deserving heavyweight contender, and he's becoming a star for them. Other than that, Christine Vickens versus Karina Dam, Gogo Silveski versus Jafar Fart, G. Perez versus Chancey Wilson, Howard Davis, Ramiro Figueroa, Steven Townsend, Julio Perez. Lots of fights on this card. I think it's 12 in total. I'm excited for it. The BKFC nights are always fun, especially at the Hard Rock. It's like something they put in the water there. Their cards there just always deliver a lot. We also had a fight this weekend, or not this weekend, this week, just yesterday. Knockout CP Freshmart became a two-division world champion, beating Junior Zarate to win the WBC light flyweight championship in Thailand at the convention. I thought that he looked really good. I had him winning the fight 118, 110. I just really just feel for Carlos Canizales, he's now the champion in recess, so hopefully he does get ordered to fight knockout CP Freshmart for that full title. But he wasn't able to make it to Thailand, so they just straight up took his belt. I feel like that's a little bit unfair, but I get it. They just wanted a world title fight there. Zarate was pretty game to come in on just a few days' notice and try his best and go the whole distance with the guy whose nickname is literally Knockout. So, good on him. But yeah, CP Freshmart is now a two-division world champion and maybe the top dog at 108 now. Very wide open division. So, a lot of fights to be made. Hopefully he can get to unifying. He can fight Carlos Canizales, fight some of these other guys, and that division gets rolling a little bit more. Let's talk about some news we've had going on the last few days. Callum Smith-David Morrell deal has finally been agreed for their WBO interim light heavyweight championship fight. Really, really good matchup. We're hearing there's a lot of potential fight cards this could land on. January 31st, Shakur vs. Teo, that's an option. The AJ fight in February in Riyadh. Apparently, it's looking like that is going to be on February 14th, which I have to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed with. That's on Valentine's Day. Not excited for that one to be on Valentine's Day because I'll probably have to miss it, but it's whatever. And then you've also got Liverpool as an option. They may just do the fight as a headliner there. But it seems like the deal has been agreed for Matchroom or at least Riyadh Season to be putting on the fight, not a PBC deal. But it's a good fight. It's a really good fight. 50-50 damn near. I would probably favor Callum Smith right now, but I don't know. David Morrell has only ever lost to Benavidez. I did think that he lost to Kataev, but I think he has a really good chance about beating Callum Smith. So glad they finally were able to reach a deal. That fight was ordered like 3 or 4 months ago. I don't know what took so long and how they were able to get it delayed so much without ever having to go to purse bids, but here we are. What else? Alexandre Usyk has been permitted a WBC title defense against Deontay Wilder. Man, the WBC just be letting anything happen. Like, I get it. Usyk does deserve his just one fight where he can just say, like, let me just fight this guy. Wilder does have that legacy. He is a former WBC champion. He is formerly, like, the heaviest puncher in the division, the top guy. But it's just that, like, Usyk should know that Wilder has nothing left. Wilder is completely shot. I would maybe say he's not even a top 30 heavyweight. Like, he may not even be in the top 30. He's that washed. So, yeah, I don't know. I really do not like the idea of Usyk fighting Wilder. I also don't even think it's safe for Wilder to keep fighting, especially not against someone like Usyk, who, sure, he's not the biggest puncher, but he can punch. We just all know how that fight goes. We all know how it goes. Speaking of heavyweights, Anthony Joshua is already at 245 pounds. He's already weighed in as a heavyweight. He's already weighed in under his heavyweight limit for the Jake Paul fight. I still think it's a little bit silly, to put a limit on any heavyweight boxing match. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, I'm okay with it because he has literally every other possible advantage over Jake Paul. It's the only thing that MVP can do to kind of limit AJ in this fight, besides just rigging it, which I know that they're not going to do. As much as some other people may say that they do, they definitely don't. It was also announced that Jamal Harvey, their prospect, he's going to be fighting Kevin Cervantes, I think is his name. He's like 5-0 on that card. In fact, that's actually going to be on the Netflix main card, which is crazy. And there's also a report that came out that Caroline Dubois is leaving Boxer and coming over to MVP. She's been signed by them, and that she's going to be making her debut with them on December 19th on this card. That has not been announced yet. They still already have 8 fights in total for that card, so there is room to do another fight. That would be on the prelims, I would guess. I wouldn't be surprised if they added a 4th women's championship to the event, but I don't know. We'll see. If they are signing her, I'd honestly probably rather them wait and not put it on December 19th, although she does need another fight to stay active, so if they can, that'd be good, but I kind of like to see them do an event in the UK or at least have her on a card early next year, like headlining somewhere. So we'll see, but that's interesting that it seems like she's moving over there and could be fighting sooner rather than later. She is lightweight champion. Let me think. Well, they have Amanda Gaye, and she's fighting Holly Holm. Beatrice Furr fighting Elif Nurterhan. The only other lightweight champion right now is Terry Harper. who's with Matchroom, so maybe they could make that fight. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Misfits Mania has been announced that it'll be broadcast on Rumble Premium. Yeah, I think it's going to be a pay-per-view on Rumble, which is like Kick or Twitch, just one of those streaming sites. This is because DAZN does not want to platform Andrew Tate. I don't really blame them. The guy's a dickhead. So not surprised there. That press conference that they had with Tate and Chase Damar was actually really interesting and really entertaining. It was very funny. They're both pretty funny, and their banter was great. But as for the fight itself, yeah, it's not going to be on DAZN pay-per-view. YouTube, I think, has also banned Andrew Tate, so he won't be on there. This is really the only place that will allow it. So, a little bit just kind of frustrating. We have to watch the fight on something like Rumble, but you got to do what you got to do. The card is great, and I do have interest in seeing how good Andrew Tate is at his age, in this far gone outside of fighting, and especially against an opponent as weak as Chase Damar is. No offense to Chase Damar, but he's just not that good. What else? Turkey Al-Sheikh says he wants Conor Benn to fight the winner of Mario Barrios Ryan Garcia on Cinco de Mayo. So it looks like Benavidez Zurdo is pretty much agreed for Cinco de Mayo, and this is the reason why Turkey is having Canelo fight before then. Hopefully, realistically, although I don't think that's actually the plan anymore because we heard that Canelo's going to have surgery, so he may not be fighting until later than Cinco de Mayo. But the initial plan was to have Canelo fight in February or March, and then fight again in around like October, November time, as opposed to doing his traditional May and September. And I think that's because Turkey is paying him a lot of money to get aside from that to have Benavidez step in and fill that role, which I'm surprised Canelo would do that, but Canelo is likely going to retire soon. We need someone, preferably a Mexican, to fill in those dates, and it's going to be Benavidez versus Zurdo, and it looks like he wants to put together a huge card. I mean, if you have Benavidez versus Zurdo and Conor Benn versus, say, Ryan Garcia on the same card, or even Mario Barrios, both world title fights, that's great. That's a great doubleheader in Las Vegas. That'll do great numbers. I love that. I love that doubleheader, and I think that's a really good and fun and exciting move that they're making. And let's just see if it all comes to fruition in the new year. UFC London was just announced for March 21st, doing another fight night over there in the UK. I'm curious if they get a pay-per-view this year. I'm guessing by them doing another fight night, that means that they will not, because they usually only do one event in the UK a year. But I'm okay with it being a fight night. Their last one was a bit of a stinker. Like, the card itself they set up was going to be good. It was just that a lot of the fights just ended up not really delivering. And then you had Leon Edwards getting finished in the main event by Sean Brady. So hopefully the card just ends up being, playing out better, but they can't really predict on that. But yeah, March 21st, that's the third official UFC fight that's been booked. We're also hearing that UFC Mexico will be taking place February 28th, but that has not yet been actually announced. Boxer announced that Blair Cobbs versus Elliot Whale has been added to their card on December 20th. I mean, this is just very, very random to me. Blair Cobbs obviously had his win over Adrian Broner last year, and then since then haven't really seen him do much. I don't think he's had a fight since then, and now it just gets announced out of the blue that he's back and he's going to be fighting in the UK. There were some rumors about him fighting Kona Walker on the Eubank Ben 2 undercard, and then that just kind of fell apart and didn't happen. But he hasn't fought in a year and a half. Now he's fighting an undefeated Brit in Britain, that being Elliot Whale, of course, who I think is actually pretty decent. But, I mean, that's a big step up he's doing against Blair Cobbs. I don't know. I mean, Boxer, their BBC cards are weird because with both of them, they'll have a good main event, and then the undercard will be a lot of random fights with, like, mostly just one fighter fighting like a decent name fighting someone who's nowhere near as good as them, and then they'll have, like, a random matchup that's just, like, actually a really good fight. And that's what this is. I mean, Cobbs vs. Whale is actually like, I never would have thought that, but I like it. I mean, they also have Frankie Stringer fighting Levi Giles, so a bit of a step up there. So there's just some interesting fights on that Simpson-Williamson undercard. But yeah, I'm guessing this will be co-main event, and I like it. No Limit have announced that they've signed rugby player Nelson Asofa Solomona, and he's going to be making his heavyweight debut on January 16th. So another athlete switching over sports from rugby to boxing. Those kind of are similar. You got to be rough, you got to be strong, you got to be have that fighting spirit for sure to be a rugby player. And I don't watch Australian rugby at all, so I have no idea how good this guy is. I don't know how popular he is. But another addition to that very good January 16th card they're putting together. And yeah, big signing for them. I feel like No Limit has had some good signings recently and some good fights coming up. We still do not know if Tim Tszyu versus I can't remember the first name, but Velasquez is gonna be available in the U.S. Hopefully, it's on Prime Video. Not sure. I would actually like No Limit to get a entire U.S. broadcast deal because all their fight cards right now you can't watch unless PBC picks one of them up, and that's a bit annoying. Lastly, we were talking about a little bit earlier about Jake versus Joshua. MVP announced that another fight week event on December 16th. They announced their fight week for Jake versus Joshua, and at the Live nightclub, which is a very interesting venue, they're going to have MVP Showcase 2 with some of their new signings. They signed Luan Medeiros. He's going to be fighting Hugo Macias. They also signed Jocelyn Camarillo. She's going to be fighting Yasmin Martinez. And then Shannon Courtney will be making her U.S. debut against Jessica Radke Maltez. So 3 free-to-air fights on YouTube on Tuesday, December 16th, adding to that big fight week. Not even just Jake versus Joshua. There's just a lot of fight cards that weekend. Yeah, I love the fight week, open workout fights, whatever you like to call them. They're always fun. And, yeah, that should be a big fight week. That's all I've got for today's episode. I hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all enjoy the fights this weekend. So many good ones. UFC 323 with Merab versus Petr Yan 2 and Pantoja versus Van. Then you've got Pitbull versus Roach, Fulton versus Foster under it. And then you've also got Laura Gonzalez on this card, Ramos versus Mosley, a lot of stuff. You got Masoud versus McGrail and Walker McCormack in Monaco. You got Opetaia Cinkara, and you've got Trout Palomino 2 and Ibarola Reber at BKFC 85. So lots of fights over the next few days. It should be fun. I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so it's going to be hard to stay updated on everything. So probably not have the next episode until a few days, but we'll try and get it as quickly as possible and get caught up because there's some big fights and I want to see everything that's going to go down. I think it's going to be a fun weekend. But thank y'all so much for listening, and peace out.